The red phone rang in the silent office, its harsh tone slicing through the winter stillness. Colonel James Blackwood's weathered hand reached for it, muscle memory from decades of classified calls. Outside his window, snow drifted across the CIA's Langley campus, the December sky hanging low and gray as twilight approached. "Blackwood," he answered, voice steady despite the hour. Only emergencies came through on this line. "Sir?" The voice on the other end was tense, controlled. "Patriot Squad has gone dark in Echo Valley. No contact for 19 hours. We've just intercepted a single transmission on Sierra 7. Blackwood's fingers tightened around the receiver. Sierra 7, the Ghost Channel, a Cold War relic, silent for 30 years. "Play it," he ordered. Static crackled, then a voice emerged, strained and desperate. "Any station monitoring Sierra 7, this is Patriot Squad. We are surrounded, cut off, requesting immediate assistance." More static then. "If anyone is listening, if Alpine is listening, we need help." Blackwood closed his eyes. Alpine. A code name that shouldn't exist anymore. A ghost from America's darkest operations. "Get me General Hammond," he said. "Now." Fort Bragg stretched beneath a clear Carolina sky, the winter sun gleaming off decades-old buildings where America's finest warriors trained. In a secured briefing room, Major Robert Winters stood before a tactical display, his face illuminated by the blue glow of satellite imagery. At 42, his features were carved by experience. Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq, each mission etching lines around his eyes that told stories his official record never would. "Echo Valley, Montana," he said, finger tracing the mountainous terrain. "Remote, defensible, minimal civilian presence. Perfect location for Phantom Cell's operation." The three operators before him absorbed the information with practiced focus. Captain Susan Hayes, 36, the team's designated marksman, studied the topographical map with calculating precision. Her reputation as one of the Army's finest snipers was matched only by the whispers that followed her, a woman in a world still dominated by men. Sergeant Mike Collins, 32, communications specialist, already making notes in a weatherproof notebook. And Corporal Brian Torres, 28, their heavy weapons expert, whose casual demeanor masked exceptional skill. "Our target is Dr. Richard Steiner," Winters continued, bringing up the photograph of a thin, bespectacled man in his 60s. "Nuclear physicist, Department of Energy, missing for 72 hours. Intelligence confirms Phantom Cell is holding him at a compound in the valley. Our mission is simple. Extract Steiner, eliminate threats as necessary, exfil to designated point for helicopter pickup." "Sir," Hayes spoke up, her voice calm but pointed. "Intel on Phantom Cell's strength at the location?" "Approximately 20 operators, former special forces from various nations, well-armed, well-trained." The briefing room door opened without warning. Every head turned, bodies instinctively tensing. The man who entered carried authority like others carried weapons. It was built into his posture, radiating from eyes that had witnessed history's darkest corners. At 75, General William Iron Bill Hammond stood as straight as he had 40 years ago. His silver hair was cropped military short, his uniform impeccable despite his official retirement. "Gentlemen, Captain Hayes." Hammond's voice filled the room with gravitas earned through decades commanding America's most classified operations. "Your mission parameters have changed." The atmosphere shifted imperceptibly as Hammond approached the tactical display. Veterans recognized a legend when they saw one, the man who had orchestrated some of the most crucial covert operations of the Cold War. "Dr. Steiner isn't just any physicist," Hammond said, replacing the briefing images with new, classified files. "He's the director of Project Helios, miniaturized nuclear technology designed to evade all standard detection methods." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Project Helios, whispers of its existence had circulated in intelligence circles for years, but confirmation was another matter entirely. "If Phantom Cell extracts this knowledge," Hammond continued, "they could develop weapons that would pass through every detection system we've built since Hiroshima. Weapons that could be transported in a briefcase, deployed without warning." "Sir," Winters asked, "why is Phantom Cell pursuing this now? The Cold War ended 30 years ago. Hammond's expression darkened. Because Viktor Sokolov doesn't believe it ever ended, Major. The general brought up an image, an elderly man with stark white hair and cold, calculating eyes. A jagged scar ran from his right temple to the corner of his mouth, giving him a perpetual half-smile. Viktor Sokolov, former KGB, presumed dead since the Soviet collapse. He was my counterpart, you might say. We played the same game from opposite sides. When the Soviet Union fell, most KGB officers adapted or disappeared. Sokolov chose a third path. He built Phantom Cell from former Soviet assets, dedicated to restoring Russia's superpower status. Hammond's eyes fixed on the image with the intensity of a man staring at a personal enemy. 38 years ago, I led an operation that destroyed one of Sokolov's most critical networks. He lost face with his superiors, nearly lost his life in the purge that followed. The scar he carries? My parting gift. And now he wants revenge, Torres concluded. No, Hammond corrected. Men like Sokolov don't waste resources on mere revenge. He wants power. Project Helios would give him leverage against every major nation on Earth. Hammond reached into his briefcase, withdrawing 4 antiquated radio units, blocky, military-green PRC-1 untold transceivers that belonged in a museum. Each of you will carry one of these, separate from your standard communications gear. Collins examined the radio with professional curiosity. Sir, these are Vietnam-era, completely obsolete. Precisely why they might save your lives, Hammond replied. These have been modified to access Sierra 7, a frequency we called the Ghost Channel during the Cold War, used for our deepest cover assets behind the Iron Curtain. Why would we need these? Winters asked, the weight of the ancient radio unfamiliar in his hands. Hammond's gaze swept the room before settling on Captain Hayes. Because Phantom Cell possesses advanced jamming technology. If standard communications fail, if you find yourselves isolated with no extraction option, Sierra 7 is your last resort. Hayes studied the general with growing suspicion. There's more to this, isn't there, sir? For the first time, Hammond's composed exterior showed a hairline crack, a flicker of something between hope and uncertainty. If you use the Ghost Channel, if you're fortunate, you might make contact with Alpine. Alpine? Winters questioned. Catherine Morrison, Marine Scout Sniper, recruited into the Artemis program in 1981, the finest long-distance marksman the Corps ever produced. Hammond's voice softened almost imperceptibly. Officially killed in action during a mission in the Austrian Alps in 1986. Officially? Hayes pressed. Her body was never recovered. The mission was to observe a Soviet facility, a precursor to what would become Project Helios. Her team was compromised. She stayed behind to ensure her men escaped. Hammond's gaze drifted to the window, to the distant horizon. For years afterward, there were incidents. Soviet officers with knowledge of the program eliminated by impossible shots. Intelligence appearing through channels only Morrison had access to. You're saying she's still alive, Winters stated, disbelief evident. After 40 years. I'm saying some soldiers never stop fighting, Major. Not because they're ordered to, but because duty becomes who they are. Hammond collected himself, returning to his commanding presence. Alpine is a contingency, nothing more. Focus on your primary mission parameters. As Hammond departed, silence hung over the room. The mission, already dangerous, had acquired a mythological dimension. Sir, Torres finally spoke, you don't actually believe in ghost stories, do you? Winters tucked the ancient radio into his pack. I believe in being prepared, Corporal. Wheels up in 30. The Black Hawk helicopter thundered through the Montana sky, the team secured in its belly, each operator lost in their own pre-mission ritual. Hayes methodically checked her rifle's action, the familiar movements grounding her in the present. Collins reviewed communications protocols once more, while Torres secured his heavy weaponry. Winters observed them all with the careful eye of a commander responsible for bringing everyone home. 5 minutes to drop zone, the pilot announced over the intercom. The helicopter descended into a small clearing, 10 kilometers from the target compound. The team disembarked in practiced formation, securing the perimeter as the Black Hawk lifted away, promising to return for extraction in 24 hours. Montana's winter wilderness enveloped them, pristine and merciless. The temperature hovered near zero, their breath forming clouds with each exhalation. The mountains loomed ahead, Echo Valley nestled among them like a secret kept from the modern world. "Comms check," Winters ordered. "5 by 5, Collins confirmed, but his expression quickly shifted. "Wait, something's wrong. I'm picking up interference across all standard frequencies." "Jamming?" Winters asked. "Sophisticated, military grade." Collins adjusted his equipment. "We can communicate within our team, short range only. No contact with base." Hayes scanned the ridgeline through her scope. "Movement, 2 o'clock. Multiple heat signatures." Winters raised his binoculars. Through the crystalline winter air, he could make out figures moving with tactical precision along the ridge. Not random patrols, but a coordinated search pattern. "They knew we were coming," he realized aloud. "Take cover." The first shots cracked across the valley, bullets impacting trees around them. The team scattered to defensive positions, returning fire with disciplined bursts. "I count 12 tangos," Hayes reported, her rifle steady as she acquired targets. "Professional formation, flanking maneuver in progress." Winters watched Hayes drop 4 enemies in rapid succession, each shot placed with surgical precision despite the pressure. Collins maintained their local communications while Torres provided covering fire with his light machine gun. "They're trying to separate us," Winters shouted over the gunfire. "Fall back to the tree line. Maintain visual contact." The team executed a fighting retreat, but the enemy's superior numbers began to tell. A sudden explosion from a grenade forced them to scatter further. When the smoke cleared, Torres was gone, separated from the group. "Torres, report," Winters called into his radio. Static answered. "Sir," Collins said grimly, "they're jamming our short range now too." Darkness began to settle over the valley as Winters, Hayes, and Collins regrouped in a sheltered ravine. The gunfire had ceased, but they could hear the search parties combing the forest. "Torres is resourceful," Winters assured them, though doubt gnawed at him. "Our mission hasn't changed. We still need to reach Steiner." They moved under cover of darkness, navigating the treacherous terrain through night vision goggles. After 3 hours of careful advance, they established an observation position overlooking the compound, a converted hunting lodge surrounded by modern security measures. "Vehicle approaching," Hayes whispered, her scope trained on the access road. A black SUV passed through the compound's gate. From it emerged Viktor Sokolov, his white hair gleaming under the security lights, the scar on his face visible even at this distance. He moved with the confidence of a man accustomed to authority, flanked by guards with Russian military bearing. "They're bringing in equipment," Collins noted, observing men unloading cases from the SUV. "Looks like interrogation gear." "They're going to break Steiner tonight," Winters concluded. "We need to move now." Hayes lowered her rifle, turning to face her commander. "Sir, I have a proposal. The main guard force is concentrated on the southern approach. I can establish a sniper position on the eastern ridge, provide overwatch while you and Collins approach from the west." Winters hesitated. Standard protocol dictated the team stay together, especially with Torres already missing. Hayes met his gaze unflinchingly. "I've been training for this exact scenario for 15 years, sir. Either you trust my abilities now, or we all fail." In that moment, Winters saw something in Hayes he recognized from the finest soldiers he'd served with. Absolute confidence born not from arrogance but from mastery of craft. "Eastern Ridge," he agreed. "Radio check every 5 minutes. If you lose contact, hold position." Hayes nodded once, gathered her gear, and melted into the darkness. The compound's western approach offered minimal cover, a fact that would work to their advantage if no one expected an assault from that direction. Winters and Collins moved silently through the tree line, advancing to the perimeter fence. "Hayes, status?" Winters whispered into his radio. "In position," came the calm reply. "I have eyes on the entire compound. 8 guards visible, standard patrol pattern. Sokolov entered the main building with 4 men. Second floor. Lights on in the northeast corner." "That's where they're keeping Steiner," Collins concluded. "On your signal, sir," Hayes continued. I can eliminate the two guards at the western entry point. Winters gave the command, and two silent shots rang out in quick succession. The guards dropped without alarm. Winters and Collins breached the perimeter, moving from shadow to shadow across the compound. Hayes's voice guided them through blind spots, warning of patrols before they appeared. They entered the main building through a service door, encountering a guard who Collins neutralized with a knife thrust. The interior was sparse, utilitarian, a temporary base rather than a permanent installation. Second floor, third door on the left, Hayes directed through the radio. Be advised, two guards stationed outside. Winters signaled to Collins. They approached the corner, prepared to engage, when Hayes's voice came again. Guards down. They turned the corner to find both men slumped against the wall, taken out by shots through a distant window with impossible precision. The door was locked. Collins made quick work of it with a specialized tool. Inside, they found Dr. Richard Steiner strapped to a chair, his face bruised, glasses missing. Medical monitoring equipment surrounded him, alongside tools designed for pain rather than healing. Dr. Steiner, Winters said quietly, approaching the startled physicist. United States Army, we're here to bring you home. Relief washed over Steiner's face, followed immediately by terror. You don't understand, he whispered hoarsely. Sokolov. He knows things he shouldn't know. Collins worked to free the scientist while Winters kept guard at the door. What things, Doctor? Project Helios wasn't just about miniaturization, Steiner explained, rubbing his raw wrists as Collins released him. It was about creating weapons that could bypass all detection systems. We know that, Winters confirmed. What did you tell Sokolov? Nothing, at first. Shame flashed across Steiner's face. But he knew details that weren't in any file. He knew about the Frost Code. Collins finished checking Steiner for injuries, then froze. Sir, there's something under his skin. Lower back. Winters examined the small incision Collins indicated. Recently stitched, professionally done. Tracking device? Most likely, Collins confirmed. Military grade, probably broadcasting our position right now. We need to move, Winters decided. Hayes, we have the package, preparing to exfil western route. Negative, Hayes responded urgently. Multiple hostiles converging on your position. Sokolov is mobilizing all forces. Eastern exit is your only option. They helped Steiner to his feet, the physicist weak from his ordeal. As they moved toward the eastern exit, gunfire erupted elsewhere in the building, a diversion created by Hayes to draw attention. They had nearly reached the exit when Winters rounded a corner and found himself face to face with Viktor Sokolov. For a heartbeat, the two men stared at each other, operative and counter-operative, separated by ideology but united in profession. Before Winters could raise his weapon, Sokolov's guards pulled him back, and the moment was gone. They escaped into the forest, gunfire chasing them into the darkness. Hayes rejoined them at a predetermined rendezvous point, her face flushed from her rapid descent from the ridge. We have a problem, she reported. They've deployed search teams in all directions. The tracking device in Steiner is leading them straight to us. Can we remove it? Winters asked Collins. The communications specialist shook his head. Not in these conditions. Field surgery would likely kill him. They pushed deeper into the wilderness, the sound of pursuit never far behind. Steiner struggled to keep pace, decades older than his rescuers and weakened by captivity. There's something else you need to know, the physicist said between labored breaths. The Frost Code. It's the activation sequence for Helios weapons. It was split in two after the Cold War. The American half is secured at Fort Detrick. The Soviet half was presumed lost when the USSR collapsed. But it wasn't lost, Winters guessed. Sokolov believes it's still out there, in the possession of a deep-cover American agent. That's what he really wants from me, confirmation of who has it. The implications were staggering. If Sokolov obtained both halves of the code, he could activate any Helios weapon built using stolen plans. Their path took them higher into the mountains, the terrain growing more treacherous with each kilometer. The winter night pressed around them, temperature dropping dangerously. We need shelter, Hayes urged as Steiner began showing signs of hypothermia. Collins studied their position on his GPS. There's a ridgeline ahead. Might offer some protection from the wind. They had just reached the ridge when gunfire erupted from their right flank. Collins fell with a cry, blood blooming across his winter camouflage. "Sniper!" Hayes shouted, dragging Steiner to cover while Winters pulled Collins behind a boulder. The wound was severe, A through and through to the abdomen. Collins looked up at Winters, both men understanding the mathematics of their situation. "Go," Collins said, pressing his sidearm into Winters' hand. "I'll buy you time." "Negative. We don't leave our people." Collins gripped Winters' arm with surprising strength. "The mission is Steiner. You know that, sir. The hardest decisions in command are made in moments like these. Calculus of lives and objectives, weighed in heartbeats." 15 minutes, Winters finally said. "Then you find a hiding spot and wait for extraction." They both knew it was a comforting lie. Winters rejoined Hayes and Steiner, the three continuing along the ridge as Collins established a defensive position. Minutes later, gunfire echoed across the valley, Collins engaging the pursuit force. They pushed forward until they reached a sheer rock face. Nowhere left to run. Below them stretched a 100-meter drop to jagged rocks. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder as Collins' gunfire fell silent. "Options?" Hayes asked, scanning the cliff face for climbing routes. Winters pulled out his satellite phone. Dead. The standard radio. Nothing but static. They were cut off, surrounded, with a wounded high-value asset and dwindling ammunition. With reluctant fingers, Winters removed the ancient PRC-112 from his pack. The obsolete technology felt absurdly inadequate against the modern forces hunting them. "What are you doing?" Hayes asked. "Calling a ghost," Winters replied, tuning to Sierra 7. He keyed the microphone. "Any station monitoring Sierra 7, this is Patriot Squad. We are surrounded, cut off, requesting immediate assistance." Static answered. He tried again. "If anyone is listening, if Alpine is listening, we need help." The radio crackled, static shifting in pattern. Then, impossibly, a voice, female, older, with the calm precision of someone who had spent decades calculating wind speeds and bullet trajectories. "Patriot Squad, this is Alpine. I've been monitoring your situation." Hayes and Winters exchanged shocked glances. "Your position is compromised," the voice continued. "Sokolov has deployed his main force to your location. You have approximately 12 minutes before they reach you." "We're pinned against a cliff," Winters responded. "No escape route identified." A pause, then. "There is a cave system beneath the ridge. Entrance concealed behind a rock formation shaped like a bear's head, 20 meters south of your position. Cold War-era CIA cache point. Move now." They found the entrance exactly where Alpine described, nearly invisible unless you knew to look for it. The narrow opening led to a larger cavern, the air inside cold, but notably warmer than the biting wind outside. "How did you know this was here?" Hayes asked the disembodied voice on the radio. "I helped establish it in 1983, came the matter-of-fact reply. "Continue deeper into the system. There's an emergency supply cache in the second chamber." They followed the tunnel, finding the promised supplies, decades old but preserved in waterproof containers. Medical kits, emergency rations, cold weather gear. As they treated Steiner for exposure, a sound from the tunnel entrance froze them in place. Footsteps, hesitant and uneven. Winters and Hayes raised their weapons. "Don't shoot," a familiar voice called weakly. "It's Torres." The heavy weapons specialist stumbled into the chamber, his left arm bound in a makeshift sling, face pale from blood loss and cold. "Torres," Winters breathed, lowering his weapon. "How the hell did you find us?" "She led me here," Torres replied, collapsing against the cavern wall. "Never saw her face, just heard her voice on my radio guiding me through the mountain." "Alpine," Hayes said. Torres nodded. "Whoever she is, she shoots like nothing I've ever seen. Took out 2 of Sokolov's men who had me cornered. Shots came from over 800 meters in driving snow." While Hayes treated Torres's wounds, Winters returned to the radio. "Alpine, we've regrouped with Torres. Thank you." Sokolov is converging on your position, Alpine responded. He's deployed his remaining forces in a search pattern centered on the cliff face. The tracking device in Steiner is still active. Can you help us neutralize it? Negative, but I can create a diversion. Stand by. Minutes later, distant explosions echoed through the mountain. Alpine's voice returned. Charges placed at 3 key points in Sokolov's perimeter. His forces are redirecting to investigate. You have a window to move deeper into the cave system. As they prepared to move, Hayes approached Winters. Sir, permission to speak freely? Winters nodded. Catherine Morrison, the woman Hammond told us about. If she's been operating independently for 40 years, then she's devoted her entire life to a war that officially ended decades ago, Winters finished. Some soldiers never come home, Hayes, not because they can't, but because the mission becomes everything. Hayes considered this, her expression thoughtful. Is that admiration in your voice, sir? Respect, Winters corrected. There's a difference. They gathered their equipment and moved deeper into the cave system, Alpine's voice occasionally guiding them through junctions and narrow passages. The system was extensive, clearly modified decades earlier for covert operations. The main tunnel leads to an exit on the north face, Alpine informed them. Approximately 2 kilometers from your current position. As they navigated the darkness, Steiner spoke quietly to Winters. Major, there's something else you should know. I'm not just a scientist. I'm the designated custodian of the American half of the Frost Code. Why are you telling me this now? Because Sokolov knows something I didn't until he interrogated me. The Soviet half of the code wasn't lost during the collapse. It's been held all these years by an American deep cover agent. Winters processed this revelation. Who has it? That's what Sokolov wanted to know. He believes it's Catherine Morrison. The radio crackled. Major Winters. Alpine's voice had changed, tighter, more controlled. Sokolov has found the cave entrance. They're deploying tactical teams to pursue you through the system. How long do we have? Minutes, maybe less. They increased their pace, Torres struggling but refusing assistance. The tunnels narrowed, then opened into a larger chamber with multiple exits. Alpine, we've reached a junction point. 3 possible routes. Silence answered. The radio had gone dead. Which way? Hayes asked, checking each dark passage. Before Winters could respond, a voice spoke from the shadows behind them. Take the right tunnel. It leads to the north face. They spun, weapons raised. From the darkness emerged a figure. A woman in her 70s, silver hair cropped short beneath a winter cap. Her face bore the marks of time and hardship, a network of scars testament to decades of survival. But her eyes were razor-sharp, missing nothing. Catherine Morrison stood before them, an ancient sniper rifle slung across her back, its wooden stock worn smooth by decades of use. You're real, Hayes whispered. Unfortunately for both of us, Morrison replied, her voice matching the one from the radio. She moved with the fluid economy of a lifelong operator, decades in the wilderness having stripped away everything but essential motion. You've been tracking us since the beginning, Winters realized. I've been tracking Sokolov, Morrison corrected. You became relevant when he captured Steiner. Her gaze shifted to the physicist, recognition flashing across her features. We have less time than I thought. Sokolov brought his entire operation force. Why would he commit everything to this? Torres asked. Morrison's expression hardened. Because he's not just after Project Helios. She looked directly at Winters. He's after me. The Soviet half of the Frost Code, Winters stated. You have it. For the first time, surprise registered on Morrison's weathered face. She glanced at Steiner, who nodded confirmation. 1986, Morrison said after a moment. My team was compromised observing a Soviet research facility in the Alps. I was captured, presumed dead. During 3 months in Sokolov's custody, I learned the code's location. When I escaped, I retrieved it before disappearing. Why didn't you return to U.S. control? Hayes asked. A bitter smile crossed Morrison's face. And become an asset to be exploited? The code was safer with me dead, Captain. So Catherine Morrison stayed dead. Gunfire echoed through the tunnels, Sokolov's men closing in. We need to move, Morrison ordered, reverting to operational focus. The north exit leads to a defensible position where extraction is possible. They followed her through the right tunnel, Morrison moving with the certainty of someone who had mapped every centimeter of the system. As they approached the exit, she held up a closed fist, the universal signal to halt. Sokolov has positioned men at the exit, she whispered. I'll clear the way. Before they could object, Morrison slipped ahead, vanishing into the shadows with preternatural skill. Minutes later, 3 silent shots echoed in the tunnel. Morrison reappeared. Clear. The exit opened onto a small plateau, halfway up the northern face of the mountain. The winter landscape stretched before them, beautiful and deadly in the moonlight. Morrison established a defensive position with the efficiency of someone who had fought in countless similar situations. Your extraction options? She asked Winters. Standard protocol for communication failure is a search and rescue operation beginning 24 hours after missed check-in, he replied. That's 8 hours from now. You won't last 2, Morrison stated flatly. Sokolov's remaining forces will converge here within the hour. Then we use the ghost channel, Winters decided, retrieving the PRC-1 or 12. Request immediate extraction. Morrison shook her head. Sierra 7 was never monitored by conventional forces. It was a direct line to deep cover assets only. Then how did you hear us? Because I never stopped listening. Morrison removed her own radio, identical to theirs, but modified with additional components. Sierra 7 was my only connection to the world I left behind. She took Winter's radio, making adjustments with practiced hands. I can boost your signal, possibly reach a military frequency. No guarantees. As Morrison worked, Hayes approached Steiner. Doctor, why would Sokolov risk everything like this? The Soviet Union is gone. The Cold War is over. Men like Sokolov don't fight for nations, Captain, Steiner replied. They fight for power. With both halves of the Frost Code and the Helios plans, he could build weapons no detection system could find, sell them to the highest bidder. Nations would collapse. Morrison finished her modifications, handing the radio back to Winters. Channel modified to broadcast on military SAR frequency. Battery won't last long. Winters transmitted their coordinates and situation, receiving only static in response. Whether the message reached anyone remained unknown. They're coming, Morrison announced, scanning the tunnel entrance through her rifle scope. At least 15 operators, tactical formation. The team established defensive positions, using the natural rock formations for cover. Hayes positioned herself as secondary sniper, while Torres and Winters covered the most likely approach vectors. Steiner remained protected behind a boulder. Morrison took the highest position. Her ancient rifle settled against her shoulder as naturally as an extension of her body. Captain Hayes, she called quietly, what's your preferred weapon? Macmillan TAC 338, Hayes replied. A ghost of a smile touched Morrison's lips. Good choice. Clean action, minimal drift and crosswinds. She adjusted her scope. First target is their spotter, 600 meters at the tree line. See him? Hayes located the camouflaged figure. Got him. Wind is from the northwest, 12 kilometers per hour. Temperature affects bullet drop at this altitude. Adjust 2 millimeters up. Hayes made the correction. Both women fired simultaneously. 2 shots that sounded as one, both finding their mark with devastating precision. You shoot well, Morrison acknowledged, the highest praise from a legend. The battle erupted in earnest, Sokolov's forces advancing in coordinated waves. Morrison and Hayes engaged targets at distance, while Winters and Torres handled closer threats. But the mathematics of combat remained unforgiving. They were outnumbered, with limited ammunition and no reinforcement. Major, Torres called out. I'm down to my last magazine. Hayes made a similar report. Their position would be overrun within minutes. Then Morrison's body language changed. A subtle shift that Winters recognized from decades leading men in combat. The decision of someone preparing for a final stand. Alpine, he said quietly. What are you thinking? Morrison's weathered eyes met his. The mission is Steiner, Major. Get him out, whatever the cost. She reached into her pocket, withdrawing a small metal container. And this, the Soviet half of the frost code. It dies with me otherwise. Before Winters could respond, a new sound cut through the gunfire. Helicopter rotors approaching from the south. Extraction incoming, Torres shouted, hope surging through his voice. Two Blackhawks crested the ridgeline, miniguns blazing at the exposed phantom cell positions. The enemy scattered, seeking cover from the devastating aerial assault. Your message got through, Morrison observed, genuine surprise in her voice. As one helicopter descended toward their position, the other continued to provide covering fire. Winters organized the evacuation, Torres and Steiner first, then Hayes. When his turn came, Winters turned to Morrison. Come with us. After 40 years, it's time to come home. Morrison shook her head, a lifetime of solitary purpose in her eyes. I stopped being Catherine Morrison decades ago, Major. There's no place for me in your world. There's always a place for soldiers who complete their mission, he countered. The war is over. Not while Sokolov lives, she replied. Her gaze shifted to something beyond Winter's shoulder. Speaking of which, across the plateau, Viktor Sokolov emerged from the cave exit, surrounded by his remaining guards. Even at this distance, the hatred in his eyes burned visible. Go, Morrison ordered. I'll cover your extraction. Alpine. That's an order, Major. Something in her voice, the unquestionable authority of someone who had survived battles he couldn't imagine, made Winters hesitate, then nod. He handed her the radio. Sierra 7 will stay active, he promised. If you need extraction, if you ever want to come home. Morrison took the radio, her expression softening briefly. The mission first, always. Winters boarded the helicopter. As it lifted away, he watched Morrison turn to face Sokolov, two ancient warriors from a forgotten war, their personal battle outlasting the conflict that created them. The last image he saw before the helicopter banked away was Morrison advancing towards Sokolov, her rifle raised, moving with the certainty of someone who had waited 40 years for this moment. Arlington National Cemetery lay beneath a blanket of fresh snow, rows of white headstones stretching into the distance like silent formations. At a small ceremony in a secluded section, a group of military officers gathered around a previously unmarked grave. The newly installed headstone read, Catherine Morrison, USMC, 1950-1986. Fidelis ad mortem. General Hammond stood at the head of the gathering, his tall frame unbowed by age or the weight of memory. Colonel Blackwood beside him, both men watching as a Marine honor guard presented arms. Was a body ever recovered? Blackwood asked quietly. No, Hammond replied. This isn't about burying Catherine Morrison. It's about acknowledging her sacrifice. After the ceremony concluded, the gathering dispersed, leaving Hammond and Blackwood alone at the grave. Hammond placed a single object on the headstone, a Marine Corps sniper badge, tarnished by decades. Do you think she survived? Blackwood asked. After the mountain? Hammond's eyes fixed on the distant horizon. Morrison survived 40 years in the wilderness, Jim. She survived Sokolov's torture chambers in '86. I wouldn't bet against her. And Sokolov? Officially, Viktor Sokolov has been dead since 1991. Phantom Cell has gone silent. Hammond's expression remained unreadable. 3 days after the extraction, a research facility in Serbia linked to Phantom Cell was destroyed. No survivors, no witnesses. The method matched Morrison's operational signature. They walked together through the snow-covered grounds, two old warriors reflecting on battles fought and comrades lost. Sir, Blackwood said hesitantly, about Sierra 7. Hammond nodded. Keep it active, monitor it personally. You think she'll call in? No, Hammond admitted, but she should know someone's still listening. We owe her that much. Captain Susan Hayes stood at the firing range at Fort Bragg, watching her students practice. Since the Montana operation, she had been reassigned as an advanced sniper instructor, her experience deemed invaluable for the next generation. Major Winters approached, observing the training. How are the recruits coming along? Getting there, sir, Hayes replied. still working on wind compensation at extreme distances. Winters nodded. They stood in companionable silence, both thinking of a woman who had made impossible shots in driving snow at ranges that defied conventional wisdom. You know, Hayes said quietly, every instructor tells stories about Morrison as if she's a myth. The perfect shot in Kandahar, the impossible kill in Baghdad. And what do you tell them? Hayes smiled slightly. That the legends don't do her justice. In Hayes's office hung a weathered rifle, a Marine Corps M40 from another era, modified by expert hands for extreme long-distance shooting. It had appeared outside her quarters 3 weeks earlier, with no note or explanation. Only Hayes understood its significance. A torch passed from one generation to the next. That night, Major Winters returned to his quarters to find a small package on his desk. No postmark, no return address. Inside was a modified PRC-112 radio and a handwritten note. Some wars never truly end. Some soldiers never stop watching. Sierra 7 remains active. Winters placed the radio in his safe, understanding its significance. Somewhere in the world's remote corners, a ghost from America's past continued her vigilant watch, not because anyone ordered her to, but because duty, once embraced, becomes more than an obligation. It becomes identity. The oldest battles are fought by soldiers history has forgotten, their victories unrecorded, their sacrifices unacknowledged. But in the silence of the ghost channel, their vigil continues, guardians at the edge of memory, fighting wars that never truly end.